Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Book and Game Festival, Ryškiai, where authors connect our readers. We have a special surprise for you, and we connected today with Berlin, our author, Vanessa Walder, who is from Austria, and she's a script writer, and she writes books for children and young adults. Hello, Vanessa.
Hello, it's nice to see you. Hi. Hello to Lithuania.
Yes, it's a pleasure that we can talk today together. And I have so many questions for you. I'm really glad that we all already have your book in Lithuania. Aš ir nevykėliai gyvenimo skaičiavimo klaida. I'm really glad that it came already and it's translated in Lithuania. So later on, I'm going to ask about this book. But first of all, Vanessa, as I know, you were studying law, and now you have written more than 90 books. And could you tell us, how did you find your way to write books?
Ah, thank God. I thought you would ask me, why did you stop studying the law?
Okay, no, that's not that question. It's
why did you quit university?
Yeah.
It was really a coincidence, I think. I'd been writing at the time, most of all short stories. And when I was 17, I challenged myself to send one of those short stories to a magazine which published them. And I think at that time I made a deal with myself. If it got published, I would try to persuade this as a line of work, which is a step. To say, yes, I'll try to earn money by writing. And so I sent it in and it was published. And I got a lot of money, at least for a 17-year-old, it was a lot. And so I tried to do that again. I sent in another short story I'd written and it was published again. And I got money again. And I think after the third short story, I got used to getting money for writing. And I got a call by the editor-in-chief who'd published the stories, and he asked me if I wanted to work for him as a journalist. So I think that was the point when I hadn't really thought about working in journalism, but that was the first time that I considered not going on with studying law, which I had liked but never loved. And I didn't love university life, because it was really expensive and I had to work on the side. So it was always this balance, trying to find the time to study and trying to find time to work and earn money to afford studying. So at the time I decided I would try to be a journalist, and I earned enough money for a living. So I think it was half a year before I said, okay, I'll just try to make a career out of this. And the funny thing was I got an office with a window, and the window showed me the University of Law on the other side of the street. So it would have been possible to do both if I'd had the time, but it was soon a full-time job. So I quit university, and I did an interview, just like you do the interview with me now. And I interviewed a writer of children's books, Christian Bienig, and he was quite famous and very popular at the time. And we started exchanging emails. And after a while, he said, why do you waste your time interviewing people like me? Nobody cares about writers. Nobody wants to hear what they have to say. Our lives are completely boring. I agree. So why don't you write your own book? You're funny, you have a sense of humor, and try to write a novel. And he asked me, I think, 20 times before I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And he put me in touch with publishing houses. And I think it was 2 months later, I had a contract and I wrote my first book. And I think it was never a conscious decision to say, this is the career I want to pursue. It was more saying yes at the right time when the opportunity came knocking.
Okay, yeah, and how was your first book called?
This is always the question I get at readings. That's what children want to know. And the title in German is dicke Freunde, dünne Haut, which is the translation word for word would be fat friends, thin skin. But in Germany, it has a double sense. It means to be thin-skinned and to be really close friends. But of course, children always ask, is it about fat people? No, it's not. It's about really good friends. And it's about being self-conscious and about going through life as teenagers who don't have anyone. So this was the first time I wrote about foster care and foster children. And it became a series with, I think, 16 novels. And I think I wrote it for 10 years. So that was the first book, and it was successful, thank God. So that was the start of my career.
That's amazing. And now I'm congratulating you because you're a really successful writer. And not also book writer, but as I know, also you write movie scripts. So does it differ a lot to write for movie scripts and for books? And which one do you prefer? Or is it equal for you?
I love both for exactly the opposite reasons. I love writing screenplays because I love working with others. I love this idea that that the creative work of one person goes hand in hand with the creative work of someone else. So what I really love is writing the screenplay, and this usually is a very close work with the producers, who are not just the people who find the money for the movie, which is extremely important, but they are also usually the ones who have a vision. And we work on a screenplay, and then we find a director. And I love this way of work where I hand over my creative child to someone else who finds their interpretation. And sometimes we work on a screenplay together for a while, and then other people come in, the people who, of course, the actors who interpret the different roles in the screenplay, but also the ones who create the set or to define the motives, or the ones who create the costumes. And there are so many creative people who all come together to form this one piece of work, of art. And that's what I love about movies. And it's also the thing that I dislike after a little while, because it's never, my decision is never the last decision in the line. So it's never that I have a veto right if I don't like a decision, or that an idea that I cherish is going to be in the movie. That's something I have with novels. It's my name is on the cover of the book, and it's my decision what's in there. It's my decision how the plot goes. It's my decision which characters make it into the story and which characters I leave out. It's my decision what they say, how they speak, how long the story is going to be. So that's something I love. That's something I cherish. But of course, it's also a lonely work. So I love this balance. I love to do a movie script and then to switch back to doing a novel. And every time I work on one of these two, I know how to appreciate the singularities of this medium I'm working in.
Yes, it's really nice how you combine those two kind of jobs, and you get some opportunities by writing your own books, and other opportunities with other artists working with movie scripts. And well, I really, really want to start with the book and ask you, because actually, you as an author are known in Lithuania not just because of this book, but we have also some books already translated in Lithuania some time ago, and it was book series Meilės UAB. It was written together with Chris Dienek and also translated in Lithuania. And finally, after some time, we also received your other book, Aš ir nevykėlis gyvenimas skaičiavimo klaida. And the second book is also now being translated in Lithuania. As I know, I talked with our project manager, and I'm really keen to know what is the second book about. But first of all, could you please tell our readers what is the first book about?
Okay, that's always very difficult to talk about what a book is about. You always have to try to not spoil the experience for readers, and I'm very bad at that. I remember I've been I've been asked on Lovely Books when I did a reading there. I've been asked to summarize one of my books, and I think I gave away the ending. I wasn't thinking about it. It sounded it sounded like a very sad story, and I didn't want people to think I'd written such a sad story. So I was like, no, it ends well. They're all fine. So I'll try to tell the story in a way that will not spoil anything important. The book is about, God, I just realized you told me the title 3 times now in Lithuanian, and if my life depended on it, I could not repeat it. So thank you. So in German, it's called Die Unausstehlichen und ich, which would be translated into The Unbearables and I, or and me. And the first book is called Life is a Miscalculation. So it's about a girl named Annie. That's the German version. I know you call her N, right?
Yes, Annie. Mm-hmm.
Annie. And Annie is, she's a foster child. And for the first book, we don't know why, but there's a difference between children who are adopted by a family and children who are in the foster system, because children in the foster system usually still have parents, or at least one parent. But for some reason, they can't live with their families. So they're either in a home, in a foster facility, or they are in a foster family. And my main character, Annie, has been in foster care for years. She's 11 now, and she has some anger management issues. And because of that, she's been sent from one foster family to another foster home to the next foster family. So she's been around, and she's had a tough life for the last years, at least. And that's something you notice in her language. And this book is something she writes as a letter to her psychologist. And because she's had a tough life, she has a tough way of talking about it with lots of swear words. And because she knows that her psychologist doesn't condone swearing, she decides to censor herself and to write the words down, because she wants to be honest. In order to be honest, she has to be able to swear. And she then reads over her letter, and she scribbles these swear words out, so you can't read them. And she tells the story of how she finally found one foster family she dearly loved, and she would have loved to stay there. And they already had a son called Noah, and Noah becomes Annie's not just best friend, but he's her soulmate, her brother, and she loves him more than anyone. And she wants to stay with Noah, but the two get into trouble over and over. And finally, Noah's parents have to move to Switzerland. And this is something that happens in real life. Foster parents, see, that's, I nearly spoiled something. They can't bring Annie to Switzerland. They can't leave Germany, where they live. So Annie has to go back either to a different family or to a foster home. And this is where her world ends, where she can't take it anymore. And Noah feels the same, because he loves Annie and he doesn't want to let his sister go. So the two decide to run away together. And Noah does something very stupid, and Annie gets into trouble. And it ends the way it's supposed to end. Annie is sent to a new home, but this time it's not a foster facility, but it's a boarding school. And it's not just any boarding school, but it's a very exclusive boarding school for very, very rich children. And it's in the mountains. And you can only get there by cable car. And you can't leave on your own. It's surrounded by a forest with real wolves. So Annie is really trapped in an Alcatraz, as she calls it, with cows in the mountains. And so now she has no contact with her brother because her cell phone was taken away. And Annie decides she's going to leave this place. She's going to break free, and she's going to go look for Noah. But it's a bit difficult to break free of a place where you can't get without cable car, and you don't have a cable car yourself. So she's going to need the help of the other students in this boarding school. And these turn out to be just as unbearable as Annie. And they have a plan of their own, and they need Annie's help for it. So they make a deal. Annie helps them with their plan, and they help Annie escape. And that's the plot of the first book.
Yes, thank you so much. Not too much spoilers, so that's really good. Because
I tried.
Still so many stories and things to know. From one side, it's, as you said before, it sounds a little bit sad, but in the way it is written, you want to laugh all the time. It's such a funny story, and the way Annie tells the story, it's really funny. And all those swear words, they're really helping the situation. And Annie is very strong.
I'm glad you see it that way.
Yeah, actually, not only me. Some also other Lithuanian readers, they told that they were laughing while they were reading this book. So I think I'm not the only one. And Annie is a very strong character. She has a very strong personality. Probably of her experience that you told about her going from being in a foster family and going from one foster family to another. And also one of our bloggers, she even told that Annie is one of her favorite characters that she read in 2020. So she was really overwhelmed about this character, Annie, and I totally support her because it's a very motivating character. And what kind of values did you want to represent with any character?
What kind of values? It's funny because I read some reviews about Annie that said she's a liar and she's manipulative and she breaks rules all the time. She has a problem with authorities, which is all true, because if you haven't made any positive experiences with authorities, why would you be obeying them? Why wouldn't you have problems? So if you are a child and you are being if you're being placed in different homes all the time and you don't have a say what your life should look like, how would you be positive about authority figures? I don't see how that would work. I had a problem with the characterization that Annie is a liar, because I don't think she is. I think she's very honest. I think the few times in the book when she decides she has to tell a lie, she has very good reason for it. And she's always aware that it's not the right thing to do. She's using this as a tool to get control over her life or to protect her friends. So I think to believe there is a possibility to go through life without lying, I think that's very naive. I think you will always come to a place where you just have to use a lie. I think it's always about the motive. I think Annie doesn't do it to harm someone, and it's very rare for her not to tell the truth, which is why she gets into trouble all the time, because she has a big mouth. But she learned to have a hard shell and to not let anyone see into her heart, because she knows that would make her vulnerable, and vulnerability is not a good thing in the world she lives in. And I think what I treasure about Annie is her resilience. She is, whatever is thrown her way, it's never an option for her to give up. She always clings to the things she loves, and she tries to hold on to them, and she always gets back up. And that's something she's formed after some children I know, and that's something it breaks your heart to watch, but it's something I respect very much, and I admire this ability to, fall down, to get back up, to check for injuries, and to go on. And that's something I love about Annie.
Yes, she really has those features and characters. And Annie has two main rules that she always follows. That she doesn't tell anyone about herself anything, or at least don't tell too much about yourself. And the second rule is about that you have to eat the food that you like, because you don't know the other time when you're going to eat. So do you think that teenagers like Annie, they also create their own rules, and do they help them as for Annie?
Wow, that's a great question. I think we all have these rules. I'm not sure that we're always aware of them. And that's something that might become an issue later in life, because I think you make your experiences and hopefully you learn from them. And I think these lessons can lead to having rules, and these rules can be strict. And I think the older you grow, if you don't try to reevaluate these rules, they might become a hindrance. They might become something that blocks you from having a fulfilled life. I think I would need an example right now. I think in Annie's case, it's if you've been disappointed by someone you met, and you open up to them and you told them a secret, and then you are betrayed by these people, it might lead to the rule: you don't tell strangers anything about yourself, especially not the truth, especially not something they might be using against you at a later time. That's a valuable lesson. That's something that's going to probably prevent you from being harmed, but it's also going to prevent you from having any real friends, because those are usually people you meet later on. And that would be very sad. So I think yes, I think we have these rules. I think sometimes we don't have them as sentences. We don't have them numbered, but I think we live by them. And I think it's important to look out for rules that might become a problem later in life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, actually, even Annie, she kind of breaks the rule to not to tell others about herself, because in some moments she breaks the rule and she still speaks about herself, about her past. So as you told us, it's really good to grow up with your own rules, and maybe to make them more flexible, or to create even more other rules. And even thought that Annie is kind of a criminalist. Like she really likes to do pranks and other stuff, as other people could see this character in that way. And probably a lot of characters from the book, they see her in that way, especially adults. But most of the time, she's not afraid to take responsibility for her actions. and she's brave enough to say, here, I did it, not someone else, but I did it. And not always those bad things that she did are bad things, and maybe sometimes it's a right thing. So do you think that sometimes doing that bad things is a right thing to do?
Well, that's a difficult question. I want to say yes, but I'm a little bit afraid to say it too quickly, because I've heard of one review. I haven't read it myself, but my publishing house told me about it. They didn't like the book because they say, I don't want to give anything away, but the ending is a bit ambivalent, because all the children decide to do something that is, in my eyes, morally right, but from the perspective of the law or the society we live in, is something you teach your children to be wrong. So I would say this is what we try to do in life. We try to find our own moral compass, and we try to give our children enough tools to find their own footing in the world and to make their own decisions about right and wrong. Because sometimes you live in a place or in a time, in a society, when the rules everybody follows and the rules that are made for society are morally wrong. So I think you should be able, and I'm saying that especially because I'm Austrian and I'm living in Germany, sometimes you have to be able to decide for yourself what is right for this moment and this situation. And you have to be able to stand up for your decision, even if everybody questions it, and even if at the time it seems like the wrong thing to do or the bad thing to do. So yes, that's something I try to convey with my stories, and I stand by that. I've heard about a review where this is exactly the criticism they have with the story. They say children are not supposed to lie, people are not supposed to lie. Yeah, that's true, but sometimes there are situations where lying is the smart thing to do and the best thing to do and the right thing to do. For instance, I'm sure you know the film Schindler's List. There's one scene in there which is amazing. There are people in a concentration camp, mostly, I think, children. I'm not 100% sure, but there are people lined up, and one of them stole a chicken. And there's one of the Nazis there who has a gun in his hand, and he says, "Who of you stole that chicken? If you don't tell me, I'm going to shoot one after the other." And finally, to prove that he's serious, he shoots one person. And he asks again, "Who stole the chicken?" And one boy steps forward, and the man asks him, "You know who stole it?" And he just nods, and he said, "Okay, who stole it?" And the boy points on the person who was just shot. And I think we know that this is probably not the person who stole the chicken, but, the threat is over at that moment, because that boy decided to be brave enough to step forward and say he did it. So I think there are situations in life when by lying, you do the right thing, even if lying per se is not a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And as you told that you wanted to convey also those kind of features about this book, are there any other kind of features, values, or like a secret message to all the readers, what you wanted to send to those readers?
A secret message. I love that. I'm not sure if it's a secret message. I don't really have messages in the sense that I set out to tell a story because I want to convey something that I think people should live by. I think that can be dangerous. I think readers don't necessarily, I'm sorry, I don't think readers necessarily like to be lectured. And if they get that sense that I'm trying to lecture, then I think they won't be very happy with the book or with the story. So the first thing I always try is to entertain. I want to tell a story that is gripping, that is exciting, that you love to read and maybe to reread. Because that's something, the books I love the most. They give to me this sense of feeling captured by the world they create. So I reread them. I have books I've read, I think, 50 times, and I still love them. And that's something I'm trying to create, a world where you are welcome as a reader and where you like to be. If there are messages in the stories I tell, I'm sure there are. I'm sure I always try to tell stories that are relevant to people. So I try to tell things that I've learned or things that I've thought about. And sometimes it's the questions that you find in books that really change you, because you try to find answers to them, and not so much the answers you find, because an answer is only valuable if you've asked the question before. So messages, yes, but not like be good and eat your vegetables. But like find yourself, be true to yourself, live your life, try to be happy, try to have a fulfilled life. I think that would be a message that I would like to give to readers.
Mm-hmm. And also, we talked a lot about Annie because she's the main character in this book, but there are also many other characters who are really important in this book, and they even teach Annie, or they have a really strong place in this book. So could you tell us more about those other characters which they are important for you, and you think they could be also important for the story?
The funny thing about the title of the series, The Unbearables, is to me, it's such a nice play with perspective, because the title is The Unbearables and Me. And I think every single character in the book could see this title as regarding to them. And they would always say they are the me. Everybody else are the unbearables. I'm the me. You could start with the leader of the boarding school, the director of the boarding school. She would say they're all unbearable, and there's me. And you can use it for Annie, of course. And she would say everybody she has been in touch with, except for Noah maybe, is unbearable, but her. You could use it for her friend Lilith, who is blind and who is extremely bothered by all the people who pity her. She would say everybody's unbearable, and I like that, because it's always a matter of perspective, and I think people are unbearable because you don't really know them, and you don't have to get to know everybody in your life. But in this case, we have characters who don't know one another, and the more they get to know each other, the more they see we are very much alike, and we have a lot in common, and we are becoming friends, or maybe first allies and then friends. And the unbearables all have their issues, their problems. And what I wanted to do, I had read lots of children's books with one outsider in a group of normal people, and I always disliked that. I don't know, even as a child, I didn't like it that you had the one person in the group who was in a wheelchair, or the one person in a group who was blind, or who had some health issues like asthma. because I thought this was such an obvious try at getting something from the idea of inclusion. So I wanted to have a group of people who all have their issues and their handicaps, because we all have them. And worst of all, the people who have them and don't know about them. And in this case, I have a main character who has very serious anger management issues, to a point where it really makes her life difficult, and the life of everybody who has to do with her. But she finds a group of people who all have to deal with their problems, and I think they do it in a way where it's not the main characteristic of a person that they are in a wheelchair, or that they are blind, or that they can't hear. But it's just something that belongs to them, but it's not characterizing them. So we have Lilith, who's blind, but most of all, she's a bitch. She is really not a nice person in the entire first volume of the trilogy. And that's also something I didn't like, that children with handicaps are usually portrayed as being super nice. Like, here, see what you're missing. This is a super nice person, and she's in a wheelchair. No, that doesn't matter. I mean, someone in a wheelchair can be horrible, can make fun of you, can be a bully. This is not how life works, that you give someone a problem and then you make them extra nice so everybody will like them. So we have Lilith, who hates being pitied because she is extremely capable, and maybe one of the most capable in the group. But she's blind and she hates being pitied. And that's why she becomes bitchy, and she becomes vindictive, and she's a liability for much of the trilogy. But she's also very smart, and she has great ideas, and she has great ways of coming up with solutions to problems. So she becomes part of the group, and everybody starts to like her, which is not in the first book, but it develops.
Okay.
And we have Dante, who is in a wheelchair, and there's no question that he's the king of the group, that he is the leader, he's the one people follow because of his abilities, because of his character, because of the way he is. Everybody is charmed by him, is taken in by him. And so I try to have these issues for the children, but not to make them the main thing you think about them. So I hope if somebody is asked who's read the book, how is Dante? I hope they're going to write, well, he's very pretty, and he has a lot of a great sense of humor, and he's very helpful, and he's loyal to his friends. And I hope somewhere far, far down on that list, and he's also in a wheelchair.
Yeah. And I really like the idea that Annie is talking with a psychologist, and she's kind of writing a letter to him, and she's crossing out those words, all those swear words. And I would like to ask about, is it going to continue also in the second book? Because, well, still it's now translating, it's being translated in Lithuania. I haven't read yet. And is the way of telling the story is going to be the same in the second book, or it's going to be totally different?
Okay, again, I'm trying to get rid of the spoilers that are in the answer I want to give quickly. Yes, there's going to be this kind of censorship is going to be in all three books. In Germany, the third book is going to come out in a few days, I think on February 10th. And so the second book came out last year. So yes, there is going to be censorship in all three books, but the idea is Annie starts out with these anger management problems, and she calls it seeing red, which means she really sees everything in red because of the adrenaline and the blood vessels in her eyes popping. And she hardly remembers what she does in these spells of anger when she just tries to destroy everything around her. the idea was that she finds a place she calls home, and she finds friends who she feels she can trust, and they become like family to her. And the idea is that, no, it's not a spoiler. The idea is that she uses a lot of swear words in the first book. I tried not to use too many. So what I did was I wrote the book with the swear words in them, so it was natural. And I crossed them out later. So my editor is the only person, Julia Gronhoff, who worked with me. She's the only person who knows the book with words in them. And it sounded like a children's book written by Charles Bukowski. It was really, I think we were both, we had red cheeks when we read passages of the book to each other, because it's really tough. So what I did was I tried to keep this natural flow and to cross out the words later, and I even replaced some, so it's not too much in the first book, but it's a lot. And in the second book, it's a little less, because Annie settles down, she calms down, she has some self-control she learns from her psychologist and from her new friends. So it's getting a little less, she's getting a little calmer. And in the third book, it's even lesser than in the first and in the second. So she's finding herself, and I think language always mirrors the way we live and the way we grow up and the people we surround ourselves with. And that's something you see in the books too. I hope it's not too construed, not too much literature, but I hope it happens naturally. And the funny thing is that the people who told me it would not work, the censorship part, were always grown-ups, and they always said, children will not know what you mean, and they don't know these words. And I didn't believe them, because I know children, and for some reason, mostly during reading tours, children talk to me, and they talk to me in a way they don't talk to their teachers or to their parents. And I know how they speak with each other. So I was not that concerned. But the funny thing was, the first reading I did with this book, there was some kind of confusion. It was in Cottbus in Germany at a bookstore. And they hadn't realized that the book was for 11 years plus, or 10 years plus, so older than 10 years, or 10 years and older. So the children who came into the bookstore were 7 and 8 years old. And it was the only book I had with me. And and the lady who had invited me, she was standing beside me, and we watched the children come in, the little girls with the locks, and the boys, very small, even smaller than the girls. And we watched them come in. I said, they're so young. And she said, no, they're 10. They're not 10 years old. Look at them. They have their little bunny backpacks. They're very young. And we talked to the teachers, and they were like, yeah, they're 7, 8 years old. I'm like, okay, the book is 10 years plus. What do we do? And she said, well, you can try. Probably they won't know the words, and they won't know what foster children are. So that was the first thing I started. I started by asking them, do you know what foster children are? And I think 3 children did not know. And then they started to tell me, yes, my older sister is in a foster home. My neighbor was in a foster home, and now he's with foster parents. They all knew. And I think we were all surprised, even the teachers. And then I started reading the book. And the funny thing was that the children, the 7, 8-year-old children, whispered the words that I left out, because I had a bleep button on my cell phone. So I would read the sentence, and every time a crossed out word came, I would press the bleep button. So it was like, this is so bleep unfair. And every time a bleep came, I heard it all the time, because they thought they were being quiet, but it was, I think, 100 children. So of course I heard it. I tried not to laugh, but they were, I would say, 90% of the time they were right. And the other 10% was so much worse than what I did in the original version. So I really loved that. But I also got some feedback from colleagues, from other writers in Germany, and they couldn't believe that this was really my choice to do this censorship part, because they thought my publishing house wanted this, because they didn't want to publish a book for children with so many swear words, which I think would have been true. And I have to say, I'm not a fan of forcing these words on children who don't know them and don't use them, because they're going to feel uncomfortable. And you can read the books and you can use very mild words like dumb or damn, and they will fit in everywhere. It's not the words I was thinking about and not the words I was using, but they work. And you can also read the book and just not read these crossed out words, and it will still work. But it was mostly colleagues who did not understand this feature or this element that I used.
But it's very great idea. I like it
Thank
so
you.
much.
I thought so, yeah. It was really, when I came up with it, I was really thrilled, because the story hadn't worked for me until then. I knew I wanted to tell the story from the perspective of an 11-year-old foster child. And I knew how children that age, and especially with that history, talk. And I tried letting her use a milder language, and it fell apart every time. I lost her. So when I came up with the idea that she could speak the way she does, and then I could just scribble it out, that was the moment it all came together, and I knew I could tell the story. So I was very, very happy.
Yeah, it really strengthens the character of Annie. So that's very nice.
Thank you.
And also we have a few questions from our readers. We have really nice reviews about the book, how they love the book and the story, the characters, as I told you also before. And one of the questions: who inspired you to make a character as Annie?
Who inspired me to make that character? The one thing I always tell people when they ask me this is, Annie does not exist. There is not one character, not one girl who is exactly like Annie. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't use a person. I wouldn't even use myself one-on-one in a book exactly the way I am in real life. So there is no Annie, but there are 5 children I know and love who ended up in foster care for a year. And I saw the difference between before they had to go to a foster home and afterwards. And I saw the changes in them. And that's something I always wanted to write about, because I found it terrifying, but also fascinating. Because you see what it does to a child to not have the stability of a home where you know you are safe and you can't be taken from, and you will be protected by your parents or by your family. And that's something I always wanted to write about, but I did not want to write a sad story. I didn't want to write a story based on facts that is just dramatic and sad. And usually children have to be forced to read stories like this. And that's not the kind of story I want to write, because it's not the kind of story I wanted to read as a child. I remember we were forced is a strong word, but we were supposed to read Goethe in school, and Schiller and Shakespeare. And those are fantastic writers, the best of the best. But if you force them on children or teenagers, this is never going to work. You have to, this is a journey that ends with Shakespeare or Goethe. But it should start with feeling that a book you read is an adventure. It's something you like doing. It's something that's exciting. It's something that's fun and entertaining. And I think if you start there, if you start with books that entertain you and that thrill you and that give you a sense of adventure, I think then you turn people into readers, and then they might discover the high literature later on if they want to. But if you start there, you start by telling them a book is hard work. It's something you have to read. It's something that will teach you. That's like eating vegetables. And I think that's a wrong idea of starting to introduce someone to books. So I always try to tell stories that are fascinating, that people want to hear. And I try to create characters that are going to engage you, that you might like. And I have to say, especially with Annie, I was very surprised how many people like her. And I love that. It was one of the most positive things that happened to me in 2019 when I learned that readers really like Annie, because I think she is difficult. She has a lot of the character streaks that I have. And I think she can be overwhelming. I think she can be someone who people would describe as being too much. I would completely understand that, but on the other side, I heard so many people tell me she's like me in so many ways, and that's something that surprised me and that I love to hear. And I think it's not just because she likes math, but I think it's because she's very much her own person, and she feels like she's alone in the world. And I think that's something people can relate to. I think it's something, especially at age 11, 12, up to maybe up to 99. I think it's something people know, and they know that feeling. And I think that's why they like Annie. And I think they like her because they don't have to pity her, because they know she's still standing. She doesn't need their pity. But yes, I was surprised that Annie had so many friends and so many people who were rooting for her.
Yeah, that's nice how she inspires also the readers and also other people. Okay, and the second question, do you have your own idols or writers that inspire you or you like to read?
I think idols, not really, no. But I think the way I understand the word idol, it would be someone whose life I admire. And usually with writers, I'm not that interested about their lives. That's really something most people don't understand, but I never really cared about whether the books I loved were written by writers who were married or had children or lived in the countryside. And I don't really care if I read a good crime novel, whether the person who's writing this is really or used to be a policeman or a lawyer. I don't care if the book is good, if the story is good. I don't care who wrote it. So idols, not really. I have lots of books that I really love and that I've loved for years, and I started reading them as a teenager, and I will probably read them on my, well, no, maybe not deathbed, but I will probably read them for a very long time, again and again. And one of these books is by Jim Dodge. The original is called Fab, and I read it when I was 11 years old. It was a present by my father. And that's really the book, my go-to book when I don't feel good. That's the one I read, and then everything is better, because it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful, very short story with great characters, and I love everything about it. And I have some of these books. I like to read Charles Dickens every now and again. I love to read Shakespeare maybe once a year. I have these writers that I love, and they're like like friends, and sometimes you don't hear from them for a while, and then you're like, now I have to call them. Now I have to hear their voice. And that's the same for me with authors and with books. Now I have to hear that voice.
That's really nice. And I like your idea about the maybe books that you admire, but not the authors that they are idol for you. As you're following the story and you like the story and how it is told. And first of all, for the last, I would like to ask also from our readers, when you started to write this book series, did you already know that it's going to be a trilogy and you already know how it's going to end, or it came up spontaneously?
I knew how it was going to end. I knew exactly how the story would go. I didn't know everything about the characters because I like to have some room while I'm writing to develop the characters. But I knew the overall plot because it's a bit complicated and it had to fit like puzzle pieces. So I do this, it's called plotting. And I do this before I start writing, but actually it was meant to be 4 books all in all. And so the third book was very challenging for me because the first book came out in Germany in 2019, I think in June 2019, and it was successful. So the second book came in March 2020. So we tried to, originally we had planned to have 1 book per year for 4 years. And then we saw that there were many readers who were really a bit antsy to get the next novel. So I think it was it was March 15th that the second book came out. And that was, I think, 3 days before the lockdown in Germany started because of the coronavirus. So that book did not sell well because it was completely lost, like so many other books. That was really something that was overlooked. But all the new books that came out during these lockdown times disappeared pretty much. And we had the good fortune that the first book was already out, so we had some online sales, but nowhere near being in bookstores and being recommended by booksellers. So we had a tough talk about the third and the fourth book, and the publisher house, the Löwe Verlag, and I agreed that we didn't believe the virus would go away quickly. And we thought that there would be measures for a long time, like lockdowns. So we decided I definitely wanted to tell the story, to tell it to the end, because that's what I think I owe readers. And the publishing house agreed. So what I tried was to squeeze the last 2 installments into 1 book. And that took me a long time. That was really difficult. And some of the characters were cut a little bit short, but I think only 2. And I think all in all, it worked out nicely. I think the books become more exciting. And I think the third one is the one that is the most thrilling because things happen very quickly. And I'm just happy that we could tell the entire story to the readers who had started the journey with us. But yes, it was meant to be 4 books, and it was meant to go for 4 years. And now we have the third book coming out on February 15th in Germany. No, February 10th in Germany. And that would be the last book. And that's where the story ends. And hopefully all the questions are answered there.
Okay. So thank you, Vanessa, for telling about these books. And I'm really waiting for them to come also and be translated in Lithuanian. And thank you for our listeners. Also, you can hear all other interviews with our authors, illustrators on YouTube channel Debesų TV. And I wish that with Vanessa, we will meet another time face to face, not virtually. And we have another opportunity to talk about your second book when it's going to be published. And thank you so much for this conversation, really deep conversation with a lot of values and topics, the same as the book is. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Resni. This was really very, very much fun for me in this lockdown times to see another person face to face. And I hope so too. I would love to come to Lithuania. So I hope this virus situation ends soon. And thank you so much for the great questions.
Okay. Goodbye, our listeners, and see you next time.